Have you ever felt that your mind is full of ideas, full of dreams, full of questions about how the world really works? But when you look around, you see that most people are not asking those questions. And sometimes you even wonder if your curiosity is a gift or a burden. Because the more you think, the more you feel that something inside you wants more from life. More meaning, more discovery, more truth. Welcome to the channel English to Inspire, a place where we learn English while exploring powerful life stories that can wake up the fire inside you. And if you enjoy this journey together, please consider subscribing so you do not miss the next stories that may change the way you see your own life. Today, we begin the story of Nikola Tesla, a man who helped build the electric world that surrounds you today, but who also spent much of his life misunderstood, poor, and alone, which shows us something very important about success. Because sometimes the world does not recognize the value of a dreamer until many years later. Nikola Tesla was born in a small village called Smiljan, in a region that today is part of Croatia, and from the very beginning his mind was different. Because while other children played simple games, Nikola watched the sky, the storms, the rivers, and he asked questions that many adults could not answer. Questions about energy, about movement, about invisible forces that move the world around us. His father was a respected priest in the church, and he hoped that his son would follow the same path, living a calm and honorable life dedicated to religion. But Nikola felt another calling growing quietly inside his mind, a strange attraction to machines, to ideas, to the hidden rules of nature that most people never stop to think about. As a young boy, he often imagined inventions in his head with incredible detail, and he could rotate complex machines in his mind as if they were real objects in front of him, testing them, fixing them, improving them, long before he ever touched a tool or built a real model. Which shows us that sometimes the most powerful workshop in the world is the human imagination. But let me ask you something very honestly. And this question is important, not only for this story, but also for your life. Because many people say they have dreams, but their actions say something very different. So the real question is this: what are you doing with your time every single day? Are you feeding your curiosity, or are you feeding your excuses? The clock is always moving forward, always moving, always moving. And the difference between ordinary lives and extraordinary lives often begins with a simple decision. The decision to pay attention to your ideas instead of ignoring them. Young Nikola did not have modern technology, he did not have computers, he did not have the internet, and yet his hunger to understand the world was stronger than comfort, stronger than fear, stronger than the expectations that others had for his life. And that hunger slowly began to shape a mind that would one day imagine machines capable of lighting entire cities. Although at that moment no one around him could imagine how far those ideas would travel. And the deeper we go into this story, the more you will begin to see how a curious boy slowly becomes one of the most visionary inventors in human history. As Nikola Tesla grew older, something very unusual about his mind became clearer to everyone around him. Because while many students struggled to understand complex ideas through books and drawings, Nikola could see entire machines inside his imagination with perfect clarity, as if his brain was not just thinking, but actually building and testing inventions in a private laboratory that existed only inside his head. This ability was powerful, almost unbelievable, because he could rotate mechanical parts in his mind, observe how they moved, predict where friction would appear, and correct mistakes before any real machine was ever constructed. Which meant that while others needed tools and materials, Nikola often needed only silence and concentration. But this incredible mental power also brought difficulty, because his mind rarely stopped working. And when the brain never rests, it can become both a blessing and a heavy burden. And Tesla often experienced intense flashes of images, lights, and ideas that filled his thoughts day and night, making it difficult for him to sleep or relax like other people. Imagine living with a mind that constantly produces ideas, constantly analyzing the world, constantly asking how and why things move. And you begin to understand that genius is not always comfortable, because the same fire that creates great discoveries can also burn inside a person without pause. During his studies in engineering, Tesla became deeply fascinated by electricity, which at that time was still a mysterious force that scientists and inventors were only beginning to understand. Electricity was like a wild river of invisible power, something that could produce light, movement, and energy. Yet no one had fully discovered the best way to control it, and many systems used at the time were inefficient and limited. While his classmates accepted the technology they were taught, Nikola could not stop questioning it, because he felt strongly that there had to be a better way to move electrical power across long distances. A smarter system that could deliver energy to entire cities without losing strength along the way. This idea started like a small spark inside his mind, but slowly that spark turned into a burning obsession, and he spent countless hours imagining new electrical systems, testing theories in his imagination, and challenging the limits of what people believed was possible. But here is something important for you to think about right now, because stories like this are not only about history, they are also about responsibility. Your responsibility. The responsibility you have toward your own potential. Many people feel a spark of curiosity at some moment in life, maybe when they are young, maybe when they discover a passion, maybe when they dream about building something meaningful, but most people let that spark die slowly under layers of comfort, fear, and distraction. They say they are too busy, too tired, too uncertain, and day after day the clock keeps moving forward, while their dreams quietly fade away. Tesla was different because he protected that spark. He fed it with attention, discipline, and relentless curiosity. And even when his mind became overwhelmed with ideas, he refused to ignore the questions that were pushing him forward. So ask yourself honestly, not tomorrow, not next year, but now, what are you doing with the ideas that appear in your mind? Are you exploring them or are you hiding from them? Because the difference between those two choices can shape the entire direction of your life. Just as it began shaping the destiny of a young student whose imagination was already preparing him for discoveries that would soon challenge the entire world of electricity. As Nikola Tesla continued his studies and deepened his understanding of engineering, the world of electricity slowly became the center of his thoughts, because at that time, electricity was still a young science, mysterious and full of unanswered questions. And many inventors were trying to control it, but few truly understood how powerful it could become. Most electrical systems of that era used a method called direct current, which could deliver energy only over short distances. And because of this limitation, cities needed many small power stations located close to homes and businesses, which made electricity expensive and difficult to expand. While many engineers accepted this situation as normal, Tesla felt something very different growing inside his mind. A strong intuition that electricity could travel in a smarter way, a way that could move energy across long distances with greater efficiency, lighting entire cities from a single powerful source. This idea slowly transformed from curiosity into obsession, because Tesla was not satisfied with simply improving existing machines. He wanted to rethink the entire system, to redesign the way electrical power moved through the world. And when a person becomes obsessed with solving a problem, the mind begins searching constantly for patterns, connections, and possibilities that others cannot see. One day, during a moment that Tesla would later describe as almost magical, the solution suddenly appeared in his mind with incredible clarity. Because while walking and thinking deeply about the nature of electricity, he imagined a rotating magnetic field that could produce motion and transmit energy using alternating current. In that instant, his imagination exploded with images of motors spinning smoothly, electrical waves moving back and forth, and power traveling across great distances without the severe losses that plagued existing systems. He later explained that he could see the entire machine operating perfectly in his mind, observing each part, each movement, each interaction, as if the device already existed in front of him. And this moment became one of the most important turning points in the history of modern electricity. Although the world did not yet realize it, the foundation of a new electrical age had just appeared inside the imagination of a young engineer who refused to accept the limits that others considered permanent. But dreams alone are never enough. And this is a lesson that every ambitious person must understand very clearly, because having a powerful idea is only the first step, while the real challenge begins when you try to bring that idea into the real world, where doubts, competition, and powerful interests already exist. Tesla knew that if he wanted to transform his vision into reality, he needed opportunity, resources, and a place where innovation could grow. And that opportunity seemed to exist in a rapidly expanding country across the ocean, a place where industry was booming and inventors were shaping the future with new technologies. That place was the United States, and in the center of its electrical revolution stood one of the most famous inventors in the world, a man whose name was already becoming legendary, Thomas Edison. Tesla believed that if he could work with Edison, he might gain the chance to turn his ideas into real machines that could transform the way the world used electricity. And so a young dreamer with almost no money, but an unstoppable vision, prepared to leave his homeland behind and travel toward a new continent, not knowing that this journey would soon place him directly in the middle of one of the greatest technological battles in modern history. When Nikola Tesla decided to travel to the United States, he was not a famous inventor, he was not a wealthy engineer, and he did not carry a large team of supporters behind him, because in truth, he arrived with very little money and only a few personal belongings. But inside his mind, he carried something far more powerful than comfort or security, which was an extraordinary vision of how electricity could change the entire world. The journey across the ocean was long and uncertain, and during those days, Tesla thought constantly about the future that might be waiting for him in a country that was becoming the center of industrial innovation, a place where factories were growing, cities were expanding, and new technologies were shaping the rhythm of modern life. When he finally arrived in the busy streets of New York City, the contrast with his quiet European upbringing was enormous, because the city was loud, fast, full of opportunity, but also full of competition. And if he wanted to succeed, he would need to prove that his ideas were not only brilliant, but also practical and valuable. Tesla carried with him a letter of recommendation addressed to one of the most famous inventors in the world, Thomas Edison, a man who had already built a powerful reputation through his inventions and his electrical company. And the message inside that letter reportedly said something very bold, something that would make anyone curious, because it claimed that there were only two great men in the world, Edison himself and the young engineer now standing before him. Imagine the pressure of that moment. A young immigrant with a powerful mind but almost no resources meeting a legendary inventor who controlled large laboratories, large projects, and a growing electrical empire. At first, Edison recognized Tesla's intelligence and hired him to work on improving electrical systems, and Tesla worked with incredible discipline, often spending long hours solving technical problems and redesigning equipment that could make the existing power systems more efficient. But very quickly, a deep difference in thinking began to appear between the two men, because Edison believed strongly in direct current electricity, the system that his company was already using to power lights and equipment, while Tesla believed, with absolute conviction, that alternating current was the future, a system capable of delivering electricity across much greater distances with far greater efficiency. These were not small disagreements about minor technical details. They were two completely different visions of how the electrical world should function, and when powerful ideas collide, the result is rarely peaceful. Edison was a brilliant inventor, but also a strong businessman who had already invested heavily in direct current technology, which meant that accepting Tesla's ideas would challenge not only his scientific beliefs, but also his financial interests and the structure of his growing electrical industry. This moment in Tesla's life reveals an important truth about innovation that many people forget. Because when you introduce a truly new idea, you are not only presenting a technical solution, you are also challenging the comfort, investments, and reputations of people who built their success on older systems. Tesla soon realized that his dream of alternating current would not easily find support in Edison's world, and the tension between these two brilliant minds slowly began to grow, setting the stage for a technological conflict that would soon become famous around the world as the War of Currents, a battle that would decide how electricity would flow through cities, industries, and homes for generations to come. The conflict between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison slowly grew into something much bigger than a simple disagreement between two engineers. Because what they were really fighting over was the future of electricity itself, the system that would power cities, factories, and homes across the modern world. Edison had already invested enormous resources into direct current systems, which worked well for short distances, but required many power stations scattered throughout a city. And this system allowed his company to maintain strong control over the electrical infrastructure being built at the time. Tesla, however, believed with absolute certainty that alternating current was a far superior solution, because it allowed electricity to travel across long distances with much less energy loss, making it possible to generate power in one location and distribute it efficiently across entire regions. This difference was not small. It was revolutionary, and when revolutionary ideas appear, they often threaten powerful interests that are deeply invested in the existing way of doing things. The struggle that followed became known as the War of Currents, a fierce technological and business battle that captured public attention and divided the electrical industry. Edison launched a strong campaign to convince people that alternating current was dangerous, organizing demonstrations where animals were electrocuted, using AC electricity in order to create fear and doubt in the minds of the public. His message was simple and powerful. If people believed that AC electricity was unsafe, they would reject it, and his direct current system would remain the dominant technology. Tesla and his supporters, however, believed that truth and efficiency would eventually overcome fear, and they continued developing machines that could prove the power and practicality of alternating current in real-world situations. This battle was not only happening in laboratories and engineering offices, it was happening in newspapers, public demonstrations, and business negotiations, turning electricity into one of the most dramatic technological debates of the 19th century. At this crucial moment, Tesla found an important ally in George Westinghouse, an industrialist who understood the enormous potential of alternating current and decided to support Tesla's inventions. Westinghouse purchased Tesla's patents and began building electrical systems based on his designs, which gave Tesla the opportunity he needed to transform his ideas from theoretical concepts into working technology that could power real cities. Together they worked to build generators, motors, and transmission systems capable of carrying electrical energy across distances that direct current systems could not easily reach, slowly proving that Tesla's vision was not only imaginative, but also practical and powerful. But let us pause for a moment and think about something deeper, because this story is not only about machines and electricity, it is also about courage, persistence, and the willingness to stand by an idea, even when powerful voices are telling the world that you are wrong. Many people abandon their dreams the moment they encounter resistance, criticism, or fear, because it is easier to follow the crowd than to challenge it, easier to remain silent than to defend an idea that others cannot yet understand. Tesla faced ridicule, pressure, and enormous competition, but he continued believing in his vision because he knew that the laws of nature were on his side. And when you truly understand a problem, you develop a quiet confidence that does not depend on public approval. The battle between direct current and alternating current was still far from finished. But the stage was now set for a moment that would shock the world and prove once and for all that Tesla's revolutionary system could illuminate an entire city with a power that many people had once believed was impossible. The great test for alternating current arrived at a moment when the world was watching closely, because the organizers of a massive international event were searching for a way to illuminate thousands of lights across a huge exhibition space. And the company chosen to solve this challenge would gain global attention and enormous prestige. That event was the famous World's Columbian Exposition, a grand celebration of innovation, culture, and progress that would attract millions of visitors to the city of Chicago. And lighting such an enormous space with electricity was something that had never been attempted on that scale before. For the supporters of direct current, this was an opportunity to prove that Edison's system remained the safest and most reliable technology. But for Tesla and his partner George Westinghouse, this was the perfect stage to demonstrate the true power of alternating current to the entire world. When the project was awarded to Westinghouse's company, using Tesla's AC system, it was more than just a business contract. It was a direct challenge to the fears and doubts that had been spreading during the war of currents. Engineers worked intensely to install generators, transformers, and thousands of electric lamps throughout the enormous fairgrounds, creating a network capable of delivering power smoothly and efficiently across long distances. As the opening night approached, many people were curious and even nervous, because alternating current had been described as dangerous by critics, and some wondered whether the entire system might fail or create chaos. But when the moment finally arrived and the switch was activated, something extraordinary happened that no one in the crowd would ever forget. Suddenly, the fairgrounds exploded with light, thousands upon thousands of lamps glowing together in a brilliant display that transformed the night into a dazzling ocean of brightness. And visitors who had never seen electricity used on such a massive scale stood in awe as buildings, pathways, and fountains were illuminated with a beauty that felt almost magical. The success of that moment was not only technical but symbolic, because it showed the world that alternating current was not a dangerous experiment but a powerful and practical solution, capable of lighting entire cities. Newspapers across the country reported the achievement and the reputation of Nikola Tesla grew rapidly as people began to realize that his ideas had opened the door to a new electrical age. But Tesla did not simply design machines quietly in laboratories. He also loved to demonstrate the mysterious beauty of electricity itself, turning scientific experiments into unforgettable spectacles that captured the imagination of audiences. During public demonstrations, he allowed electrical currents to pass through his own body while holding glowing lamps in his hands, showing that alternating current could be controlled safely when understood properly. And these dramatic displays earned him a reputation as a kind of wizard of electricity. Crowds watched sparks leap through the air, coils generating waves of energy, and lights glowing without visible wires. And in those moments, Tesla began speaking about an even more astonishing future, a future where energy might travel through the air itself, and where people across the world could communicate instantly across vast distances. Ideas that sounded almost impossible at the time, but would slowly inspire the technologies that define our modern world. After the stunning success of alternating current at the World's Columbian Exposition, the reputation of Nikola Tesla began to grow rapidly, and newspapers started describing him with almost mythical language, calling him a wizard of electricity, a man who seemed capable of controlling invisible forces that most people barely understood. Tesla did not look like the typical inventor covered in grease and tools, because he dressed elegantly, spoke with confidence, and carried himself with the calm intensity of someone whose mind was constantly exploring ideas far ahead of the present moment. People attended his lectures and demonstrations not only to learn about science, but also to witness something that felt almost magical, because Tesla had a unique ability to transform complex electrical principles into dramatic visual experiences that captured the imagination of everyone watching. One of his most famous inventions during this period was the Tesla coil, a device capable of producing extremely high voltages and spectacular electrical discharges that looked like artificial lightning dancing through the air. During demonstrations, he would stand calmly while sparks jumped around him and lamps lit up in his hands without any visible wires connected to them. And to many spectators, it felt as if they were watching a scene from the future rather than a scientific experiment happening in the present. These demonstrations were not only entertainment, because Tesla was trying to show something profound about the nature of energy, the possibility that electricity might one day be transmitted without wires, traveling through the air itself to powered devices anywhere on the planet. At a time when most homes did not even have reliable electricity yet, Tesla was already imagining a world where energy and information could move freely across enormous distances. But his imagination did not stop there, because Tesla also experimented with radio waves, remote control technologies, and new types of electrical motors that could transform industries. In one remarkable demonstration, he revealed a small boat that moved across water without any visible operator, controlled entirely through radio signals that he transmitted from a distance. And this idea amazed audiences because it suggested that machines might someday be guided without direct human contact. Today, we see remote controls, wireless communication, and automated systems everywhere around us. But in Tesla's time, these ideas seemed almost impossible, like scenes from science fiction long before that genre even existed. However, there is something important we must recognize about visionary people like Tesla, because when your imagination moves far ahead of your time, the world does not always follow immediately. Many investors and businessmen prefer safe ideas that produce quick results, while Tesla was dreaming about technologies that might take decades to fully understand and develop. His mind was already racing toward enormous projects that would require massive funding, bold supporters, and patience that few people were willing to offer. While the world admired his brilliance and enjoyed his dramatic demonstrations, the next stage of his dream would demand something much more difficult than applause. It would require the construction of a gigantic project that Tesla believed could transmit energy across the entire planet. A project that would soon rise from the ground in the form of a mysterious tower designed to send power and information through the air itself. The dream that began forming in Nikola Tesla's mind after his dramatic demonstrations of wireless energy slowly grew into one of the most ambitious technological projects anyone had ever attempted, because Tesla was no longer thinking only about lighting cities or building powerful motors. He was imagining a global system that could transmit electricity and information across the entire planet without wires. At the center of this extraordinary vision was a massive structure known as the Wardenclyffe Tower, a towering installation that Tesla believed could send electrical energy through the earth and the atmosphere, allowing power to reach distant locations without the complex networks of cables and infrastructure that traditional systems required. To many people, this idea sounded unbelievable, almost like something from a dream rather than a scientific plan. But Tesla believed deeply that the natural properties of the planet could be used to carry energy in ways that had never been fully explored. To build this ambitious project, Tesla needed enormous financial support, because constructing such a system required land, materials, engineers, and advanced equipment capable of generating powerful electrical signals. One of the key figures who initially agreed to support the project was J.P. Morgan, a powerful investor whose resources made it possible for Tesla to begin construction of the tower on Long Island near New York. For a moment, it seemed that Tesla's greatest dream might actually become reality, because the tower began rising from the ground, a mysterious structure with a huge dome designed to transmit energy across vast distances. Tesla worked tirelessly, driven by the belief that he was building the foundation for a new era in human civilization, an era where electricity would flow freely across the world, bringing light, communication, and technological progress to every corner of the planet. But bold visions often face harsh economic realities, and as the project continued, the financial support behind it began to weaken. Investors started asking difficult questions about how this system would generate profit, because transmitting free energy around the world was an inspiring idea, but not an easy business model for those who expected clear financial returns. At the same time, other inventors were making progress with more practical communication systems, and the competition for attention and funding became intense. Gradually, the flow of money that Tesla depended on slowed down, and when support from powerful backers began to disappear, the construction of the tower also slowed, leaving Tesla trapped between a revolutionary idea and the harsh limits of financial reality. This moment in Tesla's life shows a difficult truth about innovation that many dreamers eventually face, because having a brilliant idea is not always enough to convince the world to invest time and resources into something that feels uncertain or risky. Investors often prefer projects that promise quick profits and predictable results, while visionary inventions sometimes require patience and faith that the future will justify the effort. Tesla continued believing that his wireless power system could transform the world, but without the financial support needed to complete the project, the great tower eventually stood silent, unfinished, and surrounded by doubt. The dream that once promised to power the entire planet was slowly fading, and the man who had once illuminated entire cities with his inventions was about to enter a long and lonely period, where recognition and success would become much harder to find. As the years passed and the great tower at Wardenclyffe stood unfinished, the life of Nikola Tesla slowly began to change in ways that were difficult and painful, because the world that once admired his brilliant demonstrations was now moving forward with other technologies, other inventors, and other business empires that had stronger financial foundations. Without the support of powerful investors like J.P. Morgan, Tesla found it increasingly difficult to fund the large experiments and ambitious projects that had once defined his work. The laboratories where he had once produced spectacular electrical experiments became quieter, and the resources that fueled his creativity gradually disappeared, leaving him with ideas that were still powerful, but much harder to transform into reality. Many people who had once celebrated his genius slowly turned their attention elsewhere, because the world of industry often moves quickly, and when success is measured by profit and visible results, the patience required for visionary experiments can disappear very fast. Tesla spent much of his later life living in hotels in New York, often working alone and writing about new concepts that continued to flow endlessly through his imagination. His mind never stopped exploring possibilities, and even during these difficult years, he described ideas involving advanced wireless communication, powerful energy beams, and technologies that sounded decades ahead of their time. Yet without strong financial support, these ideas remained mostly on paper, existing as visions waiting for a future generation that might understand them better. The contrast between Tesla's brilliant imagination and his declining circumstances was striking, because here was a man whose inventions had helped power entire cities, yet he himself was struggling to maintain the resources needed to continue his work. There is a powerful lesson hidden inside this part of the story, and it is not only about invention or technology, but about the complicated relationship between genius and recognition. Society often celebrates success when it produces immediate results, when profits appear quickly, when achievements can be easily measured and displayed. But many groundbreaking ideas need time, sometimes many decades, before their true importance becomes clear. Tesla was living proof of this difficult reality, because although his alternating current system had already become the backbone of modern electrical infrastructure, many people did not fully appreciate the depth of his contribution during the later years of his life. While other inventors built large companies and accumulated wealth, Tesla continued thinking about the future in quiet rooms, feeding pigeons in city parks, and reflecting on the enormous possibilities that still existed within the mysterious forces of electricity. If you are listening to this story carefully, you may notice something important about the nature of determination and personal responsibility, because Tesla's life reminds us that recognition from the world is never guaranteed, and yet the value of a powerful idea does not disappear simply because applause becomes quiet. Many people stop pursuing their dreams when external rewards disappear, but Tesla's mind remained committed to discovery even when the world's attention faded away. The brilliant inventor who once shocked audiences with lightning-like sparks was now living a much simpler life, yet the electrical systems he helped create were silently powering cities across the planet. And although the world did not fully realize it yet, the final chapter of Tesla's story would eventually reveal how deeply his ideas had shaped the modern age. In the winter of 1943, the long and complicated life of Nikola Tesla came to a quiet end in a hotel room in New York City, far away from the laboratories, crowds, and dramatic demonstrations that had once made him famous. He was 86 years old, living a modest and almost invisible life compared to the powerful industrial empires that had grown during the electrical revolution he helped create. There were no great celebrations in that moment, no global recognition of the extraordinary mind that had imagined machines capable of transforming the way electricity moved across the planet. Yet outside that quiet hotel room, something remarkable was already happening, because the world itself had begun to run on the systems that Tesla had helped design. And although many people did not know his name, they were living inside the electrical future he had once imagined. Cities across the world were glowing with light produced by alternating current power systems. Factories were running powerful motors based on principles he had helped develop, and new technologies such as radio communication were growing rapidly from the scientific foundations he had explored decades earlier. The invisible network of electricity flowing through wires, powering homes, hospitals, transportation systems, and communication devices, was a living monument to the vision of a man who had once dared to imagine a completely different way of delivering energy. Over time, historians, engineers, and scientists began to look back at Tesla's work with deeper appreciation, recognizing that many of his ideas had been far ahead of the technology and financial structures of his own era. Even in modern times, the influence of Tesla continues to appear in surprising ways, because his name has become a symbol of bold innovation and fearless imagination, inspiring new generations of engineers, entrepreneurs, and dreamers who believe that technology can transform the world in powerful ways. But the most important lesson from Tesla's story is not only about electricity or invention. It is about the relationship between vision and persistence, because the path of a true innovator is rarely comfortable or predictable. Sometimes the world applauds you, sometimes the world doubts you, and sometimes the world simply moves on without noticing what you are building quietly in the background. So now I want to ask you the same kind of question that echoes throughout this entire story. A question that may feel uncomfortable but also powerful if you answer it honestly. What are you doing with your time? What are you doing with the ideas that appear in your mind? Are you feeding your curiosity, your discipline, your hunger to build something meaningful? Or are you allowing comfort and distraction to slowly bury the potential that lives inside you? The clock is moving right now, not tomorrow, not next year. Now, every great invention, every great achievement, every powerful change in human history began as a fragile idea inside someone's mind. An idea that survived resistance and failure because the person behind it refused to stop believing in its value. The world is waiting for people who are brave enough to imagine something better and determined enough to work for it every single day. So the real question is simple and direct. What will you do with the time you have been given? The world is waiting for you. Don't let them wait any longer. Stay strong.